Hello and welcome to episode 105 of my podcast all about knitting and crochet and my yarn shop here in Wiesbaden, Germany. I'm Kiko and today is August 2nd, 2021. And today I'm again wearing something old and something new. The shawl I'm wearing, I knitted 5 or 6 years ago, and it's a lace pattern that I found in a magazine called Knitting Traditions. And the pattern is supposed to be knit with lace yarn, and the first 3 times I knit this pattern, I knit it out of lace yarn, but then I wanted to see what the pattern looks like if it's knit with something bigger, a stronger yarn. So this is, I'm not quite sure whether it's Aran weight or worsted weight yarn. It's a pure wool by Wolle. It's called Soft Merino, and it has 100 meters to 50 grams. And this is a true lace pattern that has patterning on both rows. So there's no in between row to rest, but it's always patterning. So it took me a long time to knit this pattern by heart. I think the first 1.5 times I always had to look at the pattern, but then at some point I finally understood how it works and could remember it. It's only 8 rows, and it's not the number of rows that makes it difficult. It's the fact that they are similar but not the same. And sometimes I think if the rows are really different, then they're easier to differentiate and easier to remember or to memorize. But anyway, I love it. The original shawl, you knit the pattern 5 times because it's lace weight, they're a lot smaller. But with this yarn, 3 repeats was enough. And yeah, and I really like the way this lacy pattern looks with a thicker yarn. And it's very soft and I like to wear it. Yeah, and the vest I'm wearing, called Invested by Heather from HG Designs Crochet. I had thought I would wear that maybe in fall when the weather gets a bit colder, but right now we don't really have a summer. We have temperatures that, that are more like fall than summer, so I could wear this today without being too warm. And I'm really happy with how this vest came out. I knit size 2, I think. I'm still not sure what the difference is between size 1 and 2, but it's not size 3. That was what I was, wasn't sure in the beginning whether I was going to do 2 or 3. With size 3, I would have had 1 more column of squares for the back, but I think it's fairly fitted. It's not as wide as she wears hers, and sometimes I like things a bit wider, but for this I really like the way it fits. Yeah, I also changed the seam. In the original, the seam is down here, so the lowest square is being sewn together, and you have a really big armhole, but I thought this armhole is big enough and I wanted the seam here. And as I've said before, Heather does not sell her patterns on Ravelry, so you can buy her patterns on her website, and I linked to her website beneath the video, and it's an affiliate link. So if you go through my link and buy a pattern, then I will get a little percentage of that price. It won't be more expensive for you, but if you don't want to do that, that's fine. You can just visit her webpage and look at the patterns that she's published so far. I've crocheted most of her patterns. I think she's published 4 and I've crocheted 3 of them, if I'm not mistaken. I am planning on doing the first pattern that she's published. That's one I haven't done so far, but she has published 2 hacks to that pattern, so 2 changes, and the one where she uses multiple strands, and it's like an XL version of that pullover. That's the one I love, and that's the one I'm planning to make maybe towards winter when I want to make warmer things again. Yeah, so that's what I'm wearing, and then on to my projects. And yeah, I'll start as usual with my finished project. And even though this is technically finished, It's knit, it's bound off, I have sewn in all the ends. I haven't washed and blocked it yet, but I still wanted to show it to you because I just love the change that blocking makes to a shawl, especially with lace pattern, something like this. It's a huge difference. So after I knit this, you just couldn't see a pattern at all. It was just all holes and crinkly and stuff. And once you block it, it comes, you start seeing a pattern, you start seeing lines, and it makes a big difference. And even though this isn't lace, I still think it's going to look a lot different once it's blocked, especially the edge. And that again is lace, so it's no wonder it's going to be such a change. Right now it's just, yeah, a colourful something, and you can't really see the little triangles that I hope will be visible after blocking. The cable pattern is already very nice, I think, the way it is. I'm not quite sure how much blocking is going to change that, except for making it bigger. So the shawl, even though I knit the bigger size, it looks fairly small. Yeah, we'll see what blocking is going to make with that. So the plan is to wash and block it this week, so I can show you the finished shawl next week. And then there's one more thing that I haven't done yet, and that's this stitch. This is just to hold the safety pin, but this is a stitch that I lost somehow at some point. So the shawl starts off just with this simple triangle. You switch between the two colors. You switch between stocking stitch and garter stitch. It's all very simple. You have increases in the middle and at the sides. So I didn't really check on my stitch count while I was knitting that. And it was only when I got to the bit where you start the cable pattern that I counted my stitches, and I was missing one stitch. And I thought I probably forgot to do an increase at some point. It's something that can easily happen. Probably not in the middle, because then I would have, I should have missed 2 stitches. So I thought maybe I missed an increase in the side, and it wouldn't have been too bad. Nobody would probably notice. But I checked both sides, and I had done all the increases. I had done all the yarn overs. So I was a bit surprised why I was missing a stitch. And then I started looking at the shawl really closely, and that's when I found this this drop stitch. Yeah, so I just caught it, I put it on the safety pin, and I didn't get round to securing it yet. So that's what I'll do. I just sew through it and sew in the ends, make sure it doesn't unravel from there. And I'm pretty sure nobody's going to notice it once it's sewn down. Yeah, so that's my one finished project for today, and then on to works in progress. And there I realized that I have a whole lot of works in progress at the moment, and that's nothing new. Everybody who knows me knows that I love working on multiple projects, but today I realized there are more projects that I did not work on than ones that I actually put work into. And I realized maybe I should try and get the number of projects I'm working on down a little bit. So I am trying to only start a project if I have finished 2 before. I'll see if I can make that work or not, but I hope that'll motivate me to finish things, because I have a long list of things that I urgently want to start casting on or start crocheting. So we'll see how that works. And also, usually I'm quite good at putting a little work into all my projects, or most of them. But for some reason, last week, I just focused on a few things. That can happen sometimes. Sometimes it's something new that I just want to see how it works out, or something that I desperately want to finish. So that's okay too. I don't always have to work on everything. Yeah, I'm just trying to work a little more on more things next, or this coming week. But on to the works in progress. And now the socks are just prove what I just said, because I have 4 pairs of socks that I'm currently working on, and I only knit on 1 pair. And that's quite weird, because socks is something that I usually always put some work into. So I'll definitely make sure that I work on them this week. So the only socks that got some work done are the blue stockings by Kate Davies. It's these knee-length stockings that I'm knitting for myself. And I didn't even do a lot of work on them, but I knit this little bit. So I decided to put this pattern once more, and after that I'm going to start the ribbing. I tried them on just before I started filming, and it looks like this should fit. So once this pattern is done, I'm not quite at my knee yet, but I think that's a good place to start the ribbing, and then I can add a good bit of ribbing. My yarn is almost gone. I do hope that it's enough to finish the pattern, but I think it should be. So I should be able to start the ribbing in this color, and then I'll add in a dark blue so that I can show how far I could knit with 1 ball of yarn, and I can say this is what you can knit with a 100-gram ball of yarn if you have my shoe size. Yeah, so these are the blue stockings and the only socks I worked on last week. It's really weird. So that gets me to the Gletscher tunic by Jorge Locatelli that I am knitting into a dress. I didn't show that last week because I didn't take it on holiday with me because I forgot to bring one of the balls of yarn. But this got quite a bit of work done. This is the top of the dress. I started with this color, Colors in Love by Opal. Then I changed to this ice cream color that's here and in the sleeve. So the sleeve sort of shows what it's a bit like the way the color would look in a sock. This is completely different. And then I changed to color 3. That's this one. That was a subscription color, Opal Abo. And that's what I used for the lower part of the sleeves. So again, this is what the color would look like in a sock. I might do that because I have a lot left from my second ball of yarn. I might make a pair of socks in this color, and then I can wear it with the dress. And I have started knitting color 4, and that's why I put quite a bit of work in. I'm not quite sure how far I had gotten before I went on holiday, but I know I knit quite a bit with color 3. And this is the ball of yarn that I didn't bring home before I went. And the first ball of yarn in that color, it went quite fast. So it's only, let me see, did I switch? I don't know. I'm only going to knit a few rounds with this second ball, but I have it, and I can do the change between color 3 and 4 the same way I did the change between color 1 and 2 and 2 and 3. And so even though I'm only knitting a few rounds with that ball, that's okay. I can still knit socks, and I can put a bit in my blanket, and I have lots of ideas for a beautiful color like that. And this is color 4. This is Opal Comedy. That was a very beautiful series some time ago. And yeah, I wanted this color in my dress. And I have already knit 2 or 4 rounds in this color. So right now I'm doing 2 rounds, one color, 2 rounds the other color. I'll do that. I'm doing that for 12 rounds, and then I'll switch completely to color 4. Yeah, so that's what I've done. I tried it on. It fits. It's wide enough. I was a bit worried for it while it might be too tight, but it's not tight at all. It's a bit longer than I thought it would be, so it's really difficult to figure out how long the dress was going to be, depending on how much I knit with each color. So it took a long time measuring and calculating, but things never really work out the way I measure things. So I think it's going to be a bit longer than I thought, but I don't think it's going to be too long. but I'll see. I'll just knit the color the way I intended. I'll probably stop one stripe shorter than color 3 just to see if it's getting too long. Then maybe I'll do color 4 and 5 one stripe shorter. I don't think it'll be very noticeable. Yeah, just to make sure I'll get a nice length, not too long so I trip over it, but not too short either, so we'll see. Yeah, so that's my Gletscher dress by Rory Locatelli. I'm changing it from a tunic to a dress, and I've also kept knitting these garter ridges. They're supposed to be only in the yoke, but I like them, and so I kept knitting them. That they're not in the sleeve, that's as per pattern, and I kind of like the slight difference between the sleeve and the front and back like that. Yeah, so that's something I put a lot of work in. Another thing that I knit a bit on last week, but I also knit on my holiday, but didn't get to show you last week because I left it at home, is the heartstring pullover that I'm knitting for a kid. And I'm using Opal 3-ply yarn. I'm using those 2 colors and I'm holding them double and creating a new color. So this is what the yarn looks like knit up. And during my holidays, I was working on the front and back, and then I knit it high enough so I could add the sleeves in, and I've now started doing the yoke. So that I have both sleeves, I have the front and back. I've put the stitches under the arm on a holder, and I'll probably sew them together before I finish knitting because I don't really like having those needles in. Yeah, so maybe if I feel like sewing at some point, I'll just sew them together so I can take them out. But I thought it was quite funny. I had 2 of those that go with the color of the yarn, so that was quite fun. Yeah, so that's that. My sister is knitting the same pullover for the little brother, and she just finished the front and back, and she almost started knitting the sleeves again because she forgot that she already knit the sleeves, and she was saying something like, how many stitches do I need for the sleeve? And I'm like, you've already knit the sleeves, go and look for them. Which she did, and so she's put everything together, and now I think she wants to do a raglan pullover. The pattern for the heartstring pullover has a round yoke because there's supposed to be a contrast color. We're not doing the contrast color because the pullovers are so colorful already, but I was planning on doing the round yoke, so maybe we'll do it differently. Maybe she'll do the raglan and I'll do the round yoke, but that'd be fun too. So that's that. Then what else did I work on? I continued crocheting on the Carnaby crochet long pullover that was in the Simply Crochet magazine last year. And last week I had started the first sleeve and I finished the first sleeve, except for the bit that I'm supposed to crochet here to make it a straight line so I can sew it onto the front and back. But I decided on the length of the sleeve, and I added 2 more rows of the main color. That's what I did with my other pullover as well. But different from the other pullover, I did not repeat every color 3 times. So I did the first 3 colors 3 times, and those 2 colors I only did twice because the sleeve's long enough like that. So the front and back are fairly wide, so I think the seam is going to be somewhere here, which means the sleeves is not completely long, but I'm not quite sure whether it's going to block out a bit longer. And it's a cotton yarn, I never know how much it's going to stretch once I finish it, so I didn't want to have it too long, and I decided for this length. But then, just like I did with the other pullover, I decided to sort the colors for the second sleeve. So I started the second sleeve, and I started with the same color, which is this one. But then I did all the stripes all 3 stripes straight away. And then I changed things up a bit. I should have done 3 of these, 3 of this color, and then 2 of this and 2 of this. But I didn't want the white and the purple down at the cuff. So I decided to completely mix things up a bit. I did 1 stripe of white. I'm now going to do 4 of the light blue, even though I only have 3 in the other. Then I'll do 1 in the purple, and then I'll do 4 in this blue, which means I'll have more of these 2 colors because they're my favorite colors. I'll only have a little bit of white and purple because they are sort of contrast colors. They're, I think, furthest away from the main colors of the pullover or cardigan. I'm still thinking of making it a cardigan. Yeah, so I don't know. This is just what I decided to do, and we'll see what it looks like when it's done. And as soon as I finish crocheting the sleeves, I can start putting things together, which means I think I will have to sew together the fronts and the backs, and then I will have to crochet around those, then put them together, then put the sleeves in. And while I do that, I have to decide whether it's going to be a pullover or a cardigan. If it's a cardigan, I will crochet around the 2 fronts, and I will probably put in a button band and some buttonholes, and then maybe put some buttons. I just want to have the choice so I can put buttons. If I don't put the buttons, shouldn't be a problem. But if it's a cardigan, I think I would like to be able to close it. Yeah, so that's that. That got quite a bit of work done. Then the next thing I'm going to show you is the green blanket, because that's the reason for the one new cast on I have to show today. And it wasn't on my list of things I wanted to do, so that's probably not very clever. But I'll explain why I did that. So this is the green blanket I started working on quite a while ago. And blankets I don't mind having for a longer time, and I'm not too worried about finishing them soon. I just want to make sure I keep working on them every now and then so I don't forget about them. Yeah, that's the main reason. I don't want to forget about them. So during my holiday, I crocheted, I think, 10, 11 or 12 squares. I think 10, but I forgot to separate them from the squares that I had done before my holiday. But I'll just quickly show them to you, and if you want to see them by themselves, you can see them on Instagram. I posted every square that I knit during my holiday when it was done, so you can see them there. Yeah, and I used to crochet them onto the blanket every now and then before, but now that I know how to do it continuously, I want to collect as many squares as possible and then sit down and crochet them on as I go, continuously. That's the thing. And on Instagram, when I showed this square, it wasn't finished because the little leftover ball of yarn that I had wasn't enough to finish the square. So this last green round is another green glitter yarn by Opal that I have some leftover from, and I just used that to finish off that square. Yeah, the thing is, while I was crocheting these during my holiday, and these are always 10 grams because Opal produces these 10 gram minis, and I just for fun tried out how many rounds of a granny square I could crochet with that. For me, I can do 9 rounds on a 3.5 millimeter needle, and I really enjoy doing them, especially if I have these little mini balls of yarn. This was one of those minis, and this was one of those minis, but this is some leftover yarn from a big 100 gram ball of yarn that I used for something else, and then I used the leftover to do the square. And while I was doing them, I kept thinking, I wonder what it looks like if you crochet 100 grams of Opal yarn into one granny square. And I kept wondering what it would look like and what I could do with it. And of course I could do another blanket, but then I'm working on so many blankets already. And even though I enjoy working on blankets and I'm very convinced that you can never have too many blankets, I just felt like I wanted to do something different. So that was the idea that I was thinking about. And then when I was back home, I was talking to somebody about something, I don't know, and I looked at this book. And I know I've shown the book before on the podcast. It's called Modern Granny Squares. It's a German book. It's by a woman, I think she's from Iceland. She's from somewhere in the north, so the book might be available in another language than German. I'm not too sure, but I just love the book. And one of the things I love about it is that you have to look through it like this instead of like this. So you have to hold it like this. And then I found a pullover that uses huge squares. And I thought that's the idea. In the book, it's a white pullover, and I thought if I can make it with opal yarn, it would be even more fun and more interesting. And I would have a good reason to crochet 100 grams of opal yarn into one granny square. So I started crocheting the pullover. I'm trying to show it to you. As soon as I find it, I'll show you. And yeah, it was only after I started crocheting it and I looked into the book again that I realized that in the book it's not even a granny square, it's just a square. So this is what the pullover looks like. And in this pullover, the front is a lot shorter than the back because this bit is part of the front granny. So what she does is she makes one huge square, and that's what the pattern says, make one huge square, and then make a second one and put a neckline into it before you finish the square. And because the neckline is in the front part of the front square goes to the back, and that's why the back is longer than the front. And then you have to make sure that you put the sleeves in properly. So you do 2 little squares for the sleeves. So that was the basic idea. And then I thought, I started measuring and thinking about how much longer I wanted the back to be and where exactly to put the neckline. I wasn't quite sure whether to do it that way. And then I looked through the book again. And it's so funny how you can look through a book time and time again, and it seems like every time I look through the book I find something new. So the next time I looked through it, I found this one, and that's 2 big squares and 2 little squares, but it's symmetric. So the neckline is just in between the front and back square, and the sleeves are, you just put them in the middle of where the front and back meet. And now I'm not quite sure whether I shouldn't rather do that pullover. But I haven't decided yet. I'll finish the first square and then make up my mind. And I'm using this opal yarn. It's from the series Fairy Tale. It's already a few years old and I like it a lot. All the colors were very colorful, but I still have a lot of the yarn left. So I decided to use one of those colors, and this is what the square looks like so far. In the pattern, she says to use a needle 3 sizes bigger than the yarn calls for. So I'm crocheting this with a 4.5 millimeter needle, which is a fairly big needle for a sock weight yarn. But I really like the feel of it. I like the drape of it. It's not too loose, but it's not too tight either. And I just love how the colors come out. I just love how, for example, I sometimes get these red and white corners where I have several rounds of red or red and white on top of each other. It's so interesting. And then other times it's all purple and blue and green. And I love it. And this is what I have left. So I think I've crocheted more than half already. Calculating from 10 grams being 9 rounds, I calculated I should be able to do about 27 rounds. And I think I'm at 21 rounds right now. So we'll see whether theory and reality go together or not. yeah, so that was the project that sort of jumped onto my needle without being planned, but I just love working on it. And I've realized during my holiday that I just enjoy doing granny squares. And if you do little ones, then you have to start and stop all the time, every now and then. But with this big one, you can just work and work. And I can understand how people do whole blankets in one go. I know there's the granny stripe blanket that's been very popular. I've always planned on making one of these. I will at some point, but doing a blanket from the inside out is also nice. You can do a square, or if you start with a chain, then you can have a rectangle, a blanket that's a rectangle, not a square. So there's many possibilities to do that, and I just think it's interesting how much I enjoy doing crocheting a granny square. I don't like doing lots and lots of stockinette the whole time. That gets really boring. But for some reason, granny squares don't get boring for me. One of the mysteries of life, I guess. Yeah, that brings me to the last project that I'm going to show you today, and that's my Optic Blanket, our knit along that we're doing on this channel and in the Ravelry group. And the Optic Blanket is another blanket that you can do in one. You can knit every square onto the blanket itself, and then you don't have to sew anything. But as the blanket grows, you have a lot of stuff moving around on your lap. So I decided to always knit 9 squares together and then start the next piece. And this is piece number 4. And the first 3 times that I put 9 squares together, I've always used the usual opal colorful yarns. But this square, I decided to use those single color yarns. There's a word for it. Can't think of it right now. Anyway, I did the yellow and the orange and the red, and then I did the white. During the holiday, started the green. So I finished the green and I've put the pink in. That was last week's square. I loved working on it. I have a lot of the pink yarn left now, and I can't wait to make socks. Probably combined with another color, but it's such a bright and happy color. I do want to have socks from it, or maybe a pullover or something. We'll see. So this square really looks a lot different from the other ones that I've knit so far. I think it should be fun when I'm putting the big squares together. I'm making 6 of those squares out of 9 squares. Yeah, and I think it'll be quite interesting when I sit down and put them together and see how the colors go together. Yeah, so that's everything I knit and crocheted last week. As I said, it's not that as many projects as I would have liked, but maybe I'll get it better organized this week. And yeah, I still hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!